going on, guys? Welcome back to another nighttime London POV. Tonight, as always, we're going to be shooting on the Fujifilm X-S10, and tonight we're going to be using the Fujifilm X-C35mm f2. We're starting off around Piccadilly Circus and the surrounding areas before making our way towards Regent Street and beyond. I've been trying to get a little bit more creative with my night shots lately, recently trying to get shots that are a little bit more different than what I'd usually get. So this video I'm going to be trying a lot of different things than I'd usually try, so there's definitely going to be some misses in there, but there's also a few hits. And if you've got any favourites, let me know in the comments below. I'm just starting off getting a little bit warmed up, just getting a feel for the surrounding areas, just trying to get a few frames fired, just to trying to get a bit of a feel for the settings. In these recent night videos, I've been opting to shoot fully manual for the most part, as it gives me a little bit more control about how the camera is exposing for the scene. For most of my day stuff, I'm probably using 75% of the time aperture priority, but when shooting street and urban at night, it's definitely pretty much exclusively manual. But a little bit more on that in a bit. As I'm walking around, I'm just looking for interesting pockets of light, like this doorway that we've just walked past. All of the ambient inside light is kind of spilling out onto the street, so you get this really cool glow coming from that opening. And as I'm just waiting for these shots here, I notice a gent just in my peripheral vision just pop out and light a cigarette there. So I kind of took the opportunity to take a few steps back, turn towards him, and capture this shot here. And you can see the way that the light's kind of coming from the opening, wrapping around him, and kind of just illuminates him, whilst everything on that's going around and everything that's kind of passing him by kind of just falls off into the distance. Now we're just moving on. I'm making my way towards Piccadilly Circus, but as I was walking down, I noticed this bus shelter on the opposite side of the road, and the way the signage lighting was lighting up subjects walking past and also behind was creating some really interesting layers through the people on this side of the street and also the people on the other side of the street. And the shot that you just saw then, I'll flash it back up on the screen now. What I was trying to do was try and frame a subject in each panel of the bus shelter. I didn't have to wait too long for that one, compared to normal with how busy it was, but I think it worked quite nicely. One thing that I like to do to try and add a bit more creativity to some of my shots when I'm out at night is changing the focus point or the perspective that I'm shooting from. So by that I mean, like here, the couple that we're walking up to, you have the option to focus on the couple, or you have the option to focus on what it is they're actually looking at and what's going on in the distance. And depending on where you set that focus point depends on the feeling that a viewer can get from that image. And in that instance, we focused on everything going on around them, but you clearly could see that, in my opinion, the image was about them and what they were experiencing and seeing, opposed to what they are actually looking at. And same again here, just taking a photo of this lady while she's interacting with the surroundings, taking a photo of the signs. So rather than me taking a picture of the signs and just taking the photos that everyone else is getting, by taking a photo of people interacting with the signs and taking photos and capturing their memories, it tells more of the story about what was happening on that night at that present moment. So I've updated my camera settings here to 1/250th of a second, f2, and an ISO of 1600. I am tweaking around with the shutter speed ever so slightly depending on the particular scene I'm using, but for the most part at the moment, kind of keeping it around f2 and ISO 1600. Just trying to keep that ISO as low as possible to kind of minimize all of the noise, but also a shutter speed that's fast enough to freeze the motion and not get much motion blur in there unless it's intentional. Another thing that you can do to try and get a little bit more creative with your night shots is panning shots, and this is one of those that I'm a big advocate for in daytime photography, and especially night photography, to be honest, because there's something that's really cool about the way that all the background lights just merge into kind of like these colourful streams, so you get this really nice effect from it. And it's also something that allows you to make use of longer shutter speeds. So again, I'm just going to tweak my settings after these few shots, just to start getting a few more panning shots in there. Probably moving my aperture to somewhere around f8, I think it was, taking my shutter speed to 1/30th or in that area, and then just locking on my subjects and then just tracking them, and then using a low burst mode, just snapping a few shots as I'm panning with them, trying to maintain that focus. And you get this really cool sense of motion, but then this really crisp focus on the subject, and it tells a greater image than a static image of, say, one of these taxis. If you just took that image at 250th of a second, if you took that image static, it would just look like the taxi was static and not moving. But as I'm stood here, there's things flying past me as the traffic lights are going back to green. The taxis and the buses are zipping past and flying past. So to try and tell that part of the story, you can get creative with your shutter speed and your aperture to capture that sense of motion and speed and hecticness. So by panning and focusing on your subject, you can kind of nail some really creative shots. Obviously, I'm just waiting for the traffic lights to change green, because while I'm talking about motion, everyone's just stuck at a red light, so it kind of doesn't go with what I'm waiting for. But, you know, just be patient. Good things come to those who wait. So as I'm just waiting for the traffic lights to change green and for things to start moving again, see, there we go, just step back and just start firing off some low burst mode shots. And that sense of motion, you kind of feel the hecticness. Going back to my point a little earlier about manual over aperture priority, and especially for night, and in my personal opinion, in a location like this where you've got lots of artificial lights, the camera can have a bit of a difficult time trying to dial in a decent exposure, which for things like street and urban, when you're having to be a little bit more reactive to things that are happening around you, it can sometimes either make you miss a shot or under or overexpose it. And even when it comes to things like ISO and setting a range for that, like a base and a maximum ISO, and using an auto ISO, sometimes the camera can dance a little bit too much depending on where you are and what the metering is and kind of what metering mode you're using. That ISO can dance a little bit. So it just gives the camera one more thing to think about, especially in difficult conditions. And it often picks the worst choice in moments like night photography, well, in my opinion, and from what I've experienced anyway. So when you get to a location like this and using manual, the lighting's pretty consistent. There's no big flashes, there's no big brights. It's not like the sun's coming out from behind a cloud and back behind a cloud, so it's going bright, dark. It's quite a static light, so you can get to a location, dial in my settings, dial in the settings that you want for this scene, and then just almost set and forget and just enjoy taking photos. I'm curious to know, what's your like go-to creative photography technique when you're out shooting street? Let me know in the comments below. Now I'm just making my way up towards Regent Street, just seeing what's going on up there, seeing if there's anything interesting going on. For night photography, it's a really cool place to come because you've got so many of the shop lights still lit up, and as you're walking through, there's so many artificial lights that can help combat the darkness around. Just trying to layer a few shots here with the bush shelters and the graffiti and the scuzz and the scum on the windows, and just adding that little bit of grit and texture to the shots and creating those layers in there. Again, like the previous few shots, just trying to get a little creative with the kind of layering of the bush shelter and the subject sat in the bush shelter using their phone. I was trying to get a bit of more of a detailed shot using the phone, but with how quiet it was, I was a little bit self-conscious about getting too close and putting my camera right up to the glass. Although I enjoy getting out and shooting these videos, I do kind of second guess myself sometimes, especially when it's so quiet like this, and kind of try and avoid confrontation where possible. In the daytime, stuff like that kind of doesn't bother me because there's so many people about, so much going on, people are so distracted. But definitely at night, I think people are a little bit more alert, so I just try and respect people and what's going on while I'm out at night. Not that I don't respect people during the day, but you know what I mean, I try and be a little bit more mindful about what somebody would feel like in that situation when it's quiet, it's dark. Similar to the shots that I was capturing earlier, I'm trying to use this bush shelter to create layers and the textures on using the glass with the graffiti and the different lights behind them. I'd actually kept my settings where I'd left them from the panning shots I did earlier, and that's one downside about manual, is sometimes when you do get lost and stuck in that moment, you do kind of forget to change the settings sometimes. But in the instance like these, I think they turned out really well, and to be honest, they probably worked out a bit nicer because you got everything in focus almost and not struggling to work out what was focus. But I love the way that you kind of got the negative space on from the shop window on the left versus the bright lit shop window on the right, and just trying to find different ways to frame the subject, trying to wait for isolated individual subjects that could be captured in each panel of the bush shelter. As I was walking up, I noticed down one of the side streets this cool kind of, I think it was a bar, all the neon lights on the front, all the frontage lit up, and it stood out from all the lights on Regent Street itself. So I kind of hightailed it down there just to try and see what was going on. And I think it created for some really interesting compositions. And definitely when you're out on night photography, it's great to follow the light. Don't just go where the you think it's going to be cool. If you're in a place and it's not working for you, look around, see what lights you can see, what interesting lights there are about, and then kind of follow them and just see what happens. Obviously don't go anywhere dangerous, but use your own judgment. Walking down Regent Street, it was very repetitive, very quiet, but taking a 30-second detour down one of these side streets, there was so much more going on with the lighting, the colours, and then obviously this guy here, which I'm probably gonna have to mute out, but I'll leave it the experience going, but I'll just probably reduce the volume because it's got copyrighted music playing. But the people interacting with these guys in the cart were fantastic. So yeah, I just took a step about the way and just watched them go. Another thing that you can do to get a little bit more creative with your shots is maximizing on using reflections. So as I was walking down here, I could see all of the lights from the far side of Regent Street in front of me reflecting in this window here, and I was trying to create some compositions capturing the people on the other side of the street, but through that reflection, so you kind of got this almost like a double exposure, but not, if you know what I mean. You kind of see the shop, you see the shop window, you see what's going on inside, but then you also see everything that's going on the opposite side of the street through those reflections. As I was just walking out here, I saw these bushes that were quite lit from the lights that were above me on this side of the street, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to include them as some foreground, so I kind of got low, framing the street opposite, and just using them to kind of frame the subjects crossing the street on the opposite side of the road. As I touched on before, as I was shooting through this bush shelter before, or towards this bush shelter, I'd completely kind of left my settings where they were set from the panning shots earlier on in the video. So as I was walking back down, I thought I'd take the opportunity to try again, but with a more appropriate settings for the shots that I was looking for. One of the things that I touched on before that I like to do when I'm out shooting at night is looking for interesting lights. And as I was walking back down here, on the opposite side of the street, I noticed this other bush shelter with all of these bright LED lights coming from the shop windows behind it. And it was illuminating all of this like graffiti and residue all over the bush shelter windows. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to incorporate some of that into my shots, trying to frame people walking past, using that light to light the subjects, the graffiti, but then also framing the people walking past. And I think the layers that this creates did definitely create for some of my favourite shots of the night. And sometimes when you get there, you have to work it a little bit more. You can't just get there and take the shot and then that's it. Well, if you can, that's great, good on you. But for me especially, I get to these places and I can kind of see what I want to capture. But then it's just about fine-tuning the scene, kind of changing my position, changing the framing just to try and dial in the shot to where I wanted it. Because of the subjects not being super consistent or walking similar path, it's kind of difficult to make that kind of judgment and where you need to move to. Here I thought I'd finished and I was like, nah, I'm gonna go back for a round two and just try a few more because I wasn't quite happy. So sometimes that happens. Every shot's not always a banger, and sometimes you just have to kind of take a step back, reset, go back, and then like here, definitely creating such a different feeling with these ones versus the first few. I really love this shot coming up here now of this lady walking through, and you've got the graffiti kind of framing her, the bush shelter lines framing her as well as she walks past, but then she's kind of just isolated in that center section, and it creates a really cool image. So again, just waiting for people to walk past, and street photography half the time it is just waiting for people to walk past and fishing for those shots. It might look glamorous, but it often never is. But just interacting and just trying to change my framing, my perspective, just trying to see here. And same again, really like the way that the graffiti there was framing and the head of that subject walking through, and also the lines here following the shapes of the windows. And I think I was happy with some of them, so that was it. I decided to move on, and I'm really glad that I went back and tried for a second time to try and get a few more shots there. That's it for today's night walk around London. I hope you've enjoyed tagging along. Drop a comment, hit a like if you've enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more street photography and photo walks. Next time we're hitting the streets with a Viltrox 25mm f1.7, the latest lens that I've added to my collection, and to see what that's like. So make sure you come back for that. And with all that said and done, I'll catch you in the next one.